CMI is your full-service human resources provider in Central Kentucky. For 15 years, CMI Human Resources has taken great pride in helping organizations and people work. Whether it's employee handbooks or help in filling a position, no job is too large or too small for CMI. Contact the professionals today at CMI Human Resources, 859-296-2800, or online at cmiconsulting.com.
Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and we're continuing our conversation with Christina. Christina, like a lot of people, grew up in church and was there every time the door was opened, and yet she got hurt at a relationship when she was a teenager, and started kind of seeing what the world had to offer, like a lot of us, myself included, have done. Started doing some rebound dating, went through the loss of some loved ones, and next thing you know, they're talking about marriage, and that's kind of where we concluded things yesterday. So if you missed that, I want to encourage you, check out our podcast. You can simply go to our website, hopeishere.today. That is hopeishere.today, and you'll be able to listen to that podcast for about a little under 14 minutes. So I hope that you will catch that, because I think you'll be able to relate to a lot of what Christina shared yesterday about some mistakes that both she's made and I have made too, and know that you can grow and learn from it just like she has. And unfortunately, her story doesn't get any easier yet, but we hope you'll stay with us today and tomorrow as God does show up in a big, big way in her life. All right, so you got this elaborate wedding planned, and then, unfortunately, after the wedding, you lost your final grandparent, and you were really extremely close to her. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, we. Everybody in life was close to her. She was just one of those special people, a true angel on earth. So it affected a lot of people, and I was one of them. So, yeah, we lost her in a traumatic way. The women of the family all saw CPR being performed on her, and suddenly the grief of losing her was also combined with the grief of losing both of my dad's parents the year before. So I had lost them all within a year and 3 months. And I just I had already lost my way, but at this point I just went into a spiral of grief. I became a person that nobody knew. I stopped talking to friends that I had known for a long time. I became very selfish. I hardly called or visited my family, which really hurt them. I was married now at this time, but I began lusting after and thinking about other men, and then we started to have issues in my marriage over a gaming addiction that my husband had, and we just said the most terrible, disrespectful things to each other that when I think about them, it just makes me queasy. I couldn't believe the things that I was capable of saying to someone, and hurtful things that were said to me, and with all of that, we began having intimacy issues, which created more issues in the marriage as well. And
well, you talked about saying things that just really disrespectful to one another, and the Bible says what comes out of the mouth comes out of the heart. And I know when I've made mistakes like that, said things that I've regretted, it's because my heart's hurting, and that's when I say things that really just aren't God honoring and disrespectful. And is that kind of where you were? Your heart, you were just in so much pain from losing all these loved ones, and in just a really challenging marriage. So out of that pain in your heart, these words started coming out.
Yeah, I really didn't care about anybody else but me, and me trying to be happy again. I was trying different things to find happiness, and so I didn't respect him as a husband, and he didn't really love me back as a wife. We pretty much became glorified roommates at that time. So and a good friend came to visit, and she realized that I was sleeping a lot in another room, and so at that time she was going to church, and she encouraged me to go to counseling, and she recommended a counselor through Southland Christian Church. So I was like, thanks, but no thanks, and really turning it down just because it was through a church, and the only reason I had been in churches lately was for the funerals of my family. So and I was still very angry at God, especially now after losing all of my precious family members that I cared for so deeply. And so I just brushed that off. And one day I was on my way to work. One morning and I was just in a daze. I pulled out in front of a car in an intersection. It almost hit me, but it did not. And I was stuck in the intersection and had the thought of, I wish that car would have hit me. Things would be so much easier if I were just gone right now.
And all that pain would be gone that you were feeling in your heart.
Right. I was like, I just shouldn't even be here. And
at that time, it felt easier and the easiest solution. Is that right?
Yeah. And a thought was, well, I wouldn't be taking my own life, but I would be out of this world. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a way to check out of the pain without actually taking your own life. And, some of you are saying, man, I get that. I can so relate to that. Maybe it's not wishing that a car hit you, but just simply even just wishing I hadn't even woke up this morning, because life is so hard for you right now. And I just want to encourage you just to continue listening. You're going to hear how God worked in Christina's life. And it's not an accident today that you either have tuned in on Life 99.1 FM or you got this podcast. Maybe somebody has sent it to you, and you have no idea why you're even listening to it, other than just you needed some hope to know that somebody could relate to the pain that you are in right now. And Christina's telling you she was in so much pain that she just was in a daze, accidentally pulled out in front of somebody, should have been hit, but God protected her. But at that moment she just said, wow, maybe it'd just been better off if I had gotten hit and then just ended all this pain in my heart, my time on earth. So continue to listen, because Christina doesn't mean everything got better immediately, but she took the first step. And that's what it takes when you want to get healing from a lot of pain in your heart to the point that you have suicide, is two things. Number one, holding on to life and not quitting. But number two, it's reaching out and getting some help. And so what did you do next, Christina, after this accident?
Yeah, later that same day, I called my friend who had recommended the counseling before to get the information from her about it. Remember, I mentioned earlier I'd went into a lot of debt over a wedding, so money was tight, and she had mentioned that this counseling was free. And so I was like, well, it's free, so I'll try it out. And because you think you'll never have suicidal thoughts, you're like, oh, that would never be me, until you're there, and it just creeps up on you without you knowing it. And so I called Southland Church and spoke with a lady, and she heard my story, which I mainly just talked about my grief. I didn't mention really anything about marriage. And she got me connected with a counselor who I think God chose for me. And the first time I met with her, I was very nervous. I cried the entire time and talked mainly about grief that time. And the unresolved feelings I had over that. And then each time I went back, we started talking more and more about the marriage issues and less about the grief. So but
you had to deal with that grief first.
Yeah, we had to deal with the grief first. And it started coming out that there was more wrong with my marriage than I was willing to explain, and a lot of depression coming from those issues.
Well, let's go back to the grief, though, just for a moment, and going to the counselor, because I know especially for men that they're going, oh, man, I'm not doing that. Well, I want to affirm what Christina said, that some of the best money I've spent is on counseling and Christian counseling. I want it to be biblically based. And I'll tell you, Christina, I don't know about you, but for me, when I went through a divorce and went to an outstanding Christian counselor, I cried the whole first hour. And two things. One, it was just great because somebody was listening to me, and for a whole hour, they were listening to me. And so just focused on that. And, man, I just needed somebody to listen. And secondly, man, those tears I went through a whole box of Kleenex, but I felt some of the pain in my heart coming out and the healing process starting through all those tears. Can you relate to that?
Absolutely. Like I said, I cried through the whole first session, but then when I started to go back, I looked forward to going and would even ask her sometimes, like, hey, I'm having a hard day. Can we meet ahead of schedule? And there's something so amazing about sitting in a room with someone who was there just to listen to you, and they're not going to keep interrupting you. They will let you get everything out that you want to say, and you don't feel like you're taking up their time, because that's their job, to sit there and listen. And they're only focused on you, not talking about what's going on with them. I can't tell you how therapeutic that is. And even if you're not going through grief or a divorce, I feel like everybody needs a little counseling in life, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's going through a stressor. It may just be a stressor at work, or maybe you're thinking about making a big life change with your with a career, or empty nesting. There's
lots of things cause grief and life change. And so you hear what Christina's saying, and I know some of you are like, I'm like her. I had lots of debt, and I just could not afford to get counseling. And once again, we're saying Christian counseling. The reason why is because there's a God-sized shaped hole in all of us that only He can fill, and they're going to use counseling practices that a lot of, quote, non-Christian counselors use, but at the end of the day, they're going to back it with biblical facts and basis, and that's what you need at the end of the day. But so many churches are willing to offer free counseling or a pay, whatever you can afford. I mean, if it's $1. And if you need help in finding that, I want to encourage you to email me at greg@hopeishere.today. That's Greg, Greg, at hopeishere.today, or you can send me a message on our Facebook page. It's simply Hope is Here, and let us know, and I will help you get connected with some churches that offer that here in the Lexington area, because you will be amazed at how much healing you can get through counseling, as Christina said so well, from listening and just dealing with the pain. In fact, she even started to look forward to it. So you saw a lot of progress through this counseling. What happened next?
Yeah, we worked through a lot of the grief issues, and then started focusing more on the marriage issues. And so she gave me some exercises and strategies to try to improve the marriage, save it. Like I said, we just become glorified roommates. I tried to get my husband to go and join in on some of the sessions as well, but he declined. He felt uncomfortable that it was a Christian counselor mainly, but I think that's exactly what we needed. But my counselor encouraged me to try going to church again. When we talked about why I fell away from church and how big that distance had become. And so I did decide to go one night to an evening service at Southland. And once again, I was just so moved, and probably moved by in a way that I never had experienced before when I went to church when I was younger. It was just different. The message was about Esther. And I cried most of the time, but it was like a good cry, like a relief cry. And this is the challenging part of my testimony, is that during the service, I felt God more than I had ever felt Him in my life. And I felt a moving of, you need to go. It's time for you to leave. And that's challenging, because I know God doesn't like divorce, and I didn't have biblical grounds for divorce that I knew of. But I had never felt something so strongly when I thought I was so close to God before in my life. So I went home and had a talk with my husband that night, and I packed a bag and moved out, and stayed with friends for a few months until I was able to find a place on my own. And we started the legal process. Right. Yeah. And just a few days after the divorce was final, I started the divorce care program. It's a divorce recovery program, and it's not just for people that attend or a member of the church, and you don't have to be a faith-based person. Anybody can go, and it's free. It's a 13-week program.
Let me stop you there. Okay. I hate to do that to you, but she started going to a divorce care program, and we're going to talk about all that she learned in that divorce care program. So I hope you'll tune in tomorrow for Hope is Here at 12:45 p.m. on Life 99.1 FM.